Hello everybody, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening depending on where you are in this amazing world. My name is Donovan Jolly, and welcome everybody once again for another amazing video of DIY investing. Many people have been asking me, what is the most important thing that a new person getting into these markets or just anybody should understand in order to make the most profit heading into our next bull cycle? And to that, I have a very clear form of analysis that has worked almost identically over the last 10 years of Bitcoin price action. Had you have been able to know this exact form of analysis and apply it profitably to the markets, you would have made multi-millions of dollars over the last few years, and you would have cemented yourselves at making life-changing opportunities heading into this next bull cycle. Today, I'm going to be breaking down exactly what this strategy is, how you can apply it to your trading plan, and how we can all go about making the most profit heading into this next bull run. If you're new and just find this channel, always remember to do me a favor by leaving a like, comment, and subscribing. Make sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these amazing videos like the one provided for you here. And make sure you guys, if you're new, just getting into these markets, go ahead and download my free ebook. This is a beginner's guide that's going to teach you a lot of the basics for being more profitable, which is why I've made it free to download. Links are in the description. And with all that being said, let's jump right into this amazing video today. So here's the thing, guys. When it comes to understanding Bitcoin cycles, this is going to be the best thing that you can look at because there is no form of analysis, in my opinion, that has been more accurate. There is other forms of analysis that are accurate that we can definitely contrive value from. We can definitely use in our trading plans. But at the end of the day, when it comes to analyzing what is happening in an easy to follow, understand way, in my opinion, nothing beats this. Now, what we're going to be talking about is really each and every single bear market and how to know when the bottom of the bear market really is. If you apply this, there's no doubt in my mind that you're going to be significantly more profitable than the most amount of people that are investing into these markets, and it's worked out very nicely for me as well. Now, when it comes to analyzing this, when we're looking at a market cycle, what is a market cycle? A market cycle is the beginning of an uptrend. This is the bull cycle. And then the correction and the bottom of a bear trend. That is one cycle. So in the same way that we measured our last one, we have the bottom, we have the run up, we have the bear cycle, and then we have the bottom again. The distance in between this bottom and this bottom is your cycle. And so if we're ever analyzing time, the way that you analyze time inside of a cycle is by taking the time from this point of the bottom of the cycle all the way over to the next point of the bottom of the cycle. We don't have a true bottom yet in our cycle, so we're still waiting to determine that. But what we do have is the bottoms of basically the last 10 years of Bitcoin price history. So we can go off of these data points and we can actually see and speculate when our next cycle is going to be. Now, this is where it's going to get really interesting, so make sure you guys pay attention because this is going to be something you don't want to miss out on. It really is a huge help to understand how to do this. Now, if we're looking at our first bear market, this was the first cycle for Bitcoin. We had this run up, and then we have this correction. Now, we're measuring from peak low to peak low, and that's going to be the distance from each cycle. Our time in between this cycle low to this cycle low was going to be 1,155 days. So this one was a little bit shy of a true 4-year cycle, because what we're trying to see here inside of Bitcoin cycles is 4 years from this low to this low. If we're seeing 4 years, that's a true 4-year cycle. In our first cycle here that we're analyzing, we can see that this one ended up bottoming just a little bit earlier than that. But now let's go ahead and analyze our next cycle. So we take this cycle low to this cycle low, and the distance in between, this one was 1,428 days. This one was just shy of a true 4-year cycle. And in fact, we would consider it a true 4-year cycle because it's not like we're going to get to the exact day most of the time. 1,450 days is 4 years. And that's almost the exact same thing that we saw right here. We saw 1,428 days, only about a month shy of being exactly 4 years. And so that's what we're trying to look for when we're analyzing the distance in between. This is where we get into our current cycle today. Now, technically, we haven't finished a low of the bear market. yes, we're all looking at this as a potential low, and we'll kind of talk about what that means factoring into our cycle today. But what we're looking for is, once again, about 1,450 days from our last bear market bottom. So our last bear market bottom came at the very end of 2018. It was really the end of November of 2018, and that was right here. Now, if we're watching our chart today, 1,450 days is going to be taking us back to sometime in November as lining up with the low of our next cycle. Now, does that mean that we're going to see one more final capitulation and that will kind of stitch in our final low of our bear cycle? Or are we already kind of completing a cycle low and we'll just kind of round out here before going up? I really see this as being our two scenarios for us. Now, the big thing that is pointing towards a bearish scenario is just the fact what we want to see inside of a 4-year cycle. We want to see the very bottom of our bear market line up as our low point, right? We're trying to measure from peak low to peak low. And if we're looking at our last 2 bear markets, or even our last 3 bear markets, we can see that each one of these cycle lows came and there never was a lower low. This was the very bottom of our capitulation. And then the bull cycle started. The same thing happened here in 2015. Even though we kind of went sideways for about 280 days, our very lowest point of the cycle came here. And that was where we're getting all of our data points from. And so, once again, if we're measuring from this cycle low to the one that we saw in 2018, the very bottom of our bear market was almost exactly 4 years from our last cycle low. And so that's what we're trying to see here. We're trying to see somewhere around 4 years from our last bear market as being our capitulation, right? And so the fact is, we had kind of a capitulation type event that happened here in about June of this year. And so back in June, we had a capitulation event. The problem with this capitulation event is the fact that this was happening much shorter of our 4-year time frames, right? This wasn't 1,450 days. This was only about 1,300, which is going to be lining us up closer to this first cycle in here. Now, in my opinion, we can follow something like this. We could see somewhat of a shortened bear cycle low where our true cycle low came over here. And then instead of having a lower low, we just kind of trended sideways like we have seen so far. But that's assuming we never actually break support, right? If the price of Bitcoin ends up breaking support down in here and we make another final low, in my opinion, that final low is going to be taking us into November. And it would line up just on par with all of our prior cycles. Because keep in mind, all of our prior bear markets have ended in a capitulation. This was a lower low. This was the lowest low that we saw. This was the same thing. This was a capitulation event. All of this one was a 94% sell-off. This one was an 85% sell-off. This one was an 84% sell-off. This one so far, from the peak that we saw at 69,000 to the low that we saw in June, was only 74%. So we have seen a little bit of a difference inside of our most recent bear market. That's what tells me there is equal as much of an opportunity that we could see one more final low before our bear market is over, and it would happen into our next month. Sometime in November, we would expect that the support of Bitcoin near this $20,000 region would fail. We'd have a sell-off that would take us to 14, 13, 12, 11, somewhere right around there for Bitcoin. And in my opinion, that would be our true 4-year cycle low. That's assuming that we get one more capitulation. Because the other scenario is the one that I just recently talked about, where we did get a low. That was the low that we saw here in June. That's our capitulation. And we might not end up making a lower low. Let's assume that we kind of bounce off of support here, and then we start breaking upwards, and this was already the bottom of our cycle. Then we would end up seeing something that would line up a lot closer to this cycle over here. And let me compare and show you guys what I mean. Let me remove this, and let's talk about this low and this low over here. Because if we're looking at these two, notice here how Bitcoin kind of went sideways. And we made another low right here. If we take our low point and we draw it over to the second one here, and then we draw our time frame, this one's actually going to line up much closer to that 1,450 days. And so even though the low point that we were analyzing came here, and that was only 1,150 days, This one was pretty short of a true 4-year cycle. We were about a year short from being exactly 4 years from cycle low to cycle low. But if we analyze our second point, where we made a second attempt at our lowest point right here, then that one actually lines up a lot closer to 1,450 days. Nonetheless, it doesn't change anything. It doesn't change the fact that this was still the low point of our bear cycle, and even though we went sideways for another year, it never changed the fact that we never went lower than this point, right? It was still the bottom of the bear market, whether we drew our low point from 1,155 days or we drew it over here from 1,350 days. It didn't really change anything. It was still the low point. And so what we're seeing here inside of our cycle could be similar to the one that we saw back here, where technically if we were to draw the low at our point in June, it's going to line up a lot closer to kind of what we saw all the way back here in our first 4-year cycle, where it was a little bit short of a true 4-year cycle if we're analyzing from peak low to peak low. But we made a second attempt at a retest of our low. And so if you drew that second data point at our second attempt at support, then that actually lines up with a 4-year cycle a lot closer. And so let's assume that we don't make a lower low for the rest of this year. We kind of go sideways, and that is the low. We make this double bottom formation and break out. Then that would follow a lot closer to that first cycle. And so I'm talking about this just to give you guys a refresher, talking about how cycles can kind of differ between each other, how they're not always going to be 100% the same. But had you have known these time frames, you would have been able to trade this to a lot greater degree. All you're doing is analyzing the time in between. We don't know whether we're going to get another capitulation or whether we're going to bottom here. And so one thing that we do know is that 4 years from our last cycle low is going to be taking us in November. And so if all of our bear markets have landed in some type of capitulation, and that's how they've all ended, then there's no reason to suspect that we can't actually get an opportunity for a deep capitulation that takes us back down, sub 13, 14K. It's hard to say where we're going to go if we get a lower low, but bear markets in years past have proven us that it's not unheard of to see this, especially with us coming 4 years from our last bear market low. There's a lot of big things that are kind of correlating with this specific time of our year. The end of the year, this cycle, November, December, somewhere right around there would be my guess for our cycle low. And it's either going to end in a capitulation or we're going to kind of go sideways. Keep in mind, guys, that now's the time to be buying, no matter what. Whether we go sideways or get a lower low, I don't think that you're going to be proven wrong by buying and it goes a little bit lower. If we get one more final low and you bought a little bit late, or you bought a little bit early and then we dip, it doesn't really change anything because big picture, this is going to turn into a new cycle in the same way this one did, or this one did, or this one did. We're all following the same time frames, and we can look at all of our last basically 10 years of Bitcoin, and we can prove that if we're analyzing from peak low to peak low, and the distance is 4 years in between, that has always nailed our bear market bottoms. And so that's what I'm looking for once again. I've already started scaling in. If we do get one more capitulation, I'm going to do my part by scaling in again even more. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to try and predict things too much. I know that we're right there on our time frames. And so if we get another low, it's a greater opportunity for me to buy and accumulate more. If we start breaking out or we go sideways, then, had you have understood that we were so close to those time frames, maybe you wouldn't have been surprised if we start breaking out. Now, one of the things that I'm watching for is actually the altcoins, because in my opinion, these are also telling us a story for where our bear market bottom can be for Bitcoin. Now, this is Dogecoin, and the reason I'm sharing with you guys Dogecoin is because a lot of the altcoins ended up making their cycle tops in May of 2021. So if we're looking here on the Bitcoin cycle chart, notice how we kind of got two peaks. We got this peak here, and then we got our second peak at 69,000. It was in these two peaks where we saw a big difference for cryptos. It was in our first peak here at 65,000. This is where a lot of altcoins made their cycle tops. And if we're looking at Dogecoin, that's where Dogecoin topped. This was May 7th of 2021. Bitcoin peaked at 65,000 on April 12th. So about a month short. But it was right around those exact same time frames where we saw the rest of the altcoins top, the majority of altcoins. There were certain ones that kept running higher, like Solana, like Phantom, and stuff like that. But the majority of altcoins saw their euphoria right here when Bitcoin topped at 65,000. And so that's where we would draw our topping point. If we're looking at Bitcoin cycles, let's go here and remove all of our drawing tools and let's zoom back out. If we're looking at Bitcoin bear markets last almost exactly 1 year in duration. If we're looking from this top all the way to our bottom, this one was 413 days. A little over, but it was pretty close to 1 year. Our bear market in 2018 was almost exactly 1 year. In fact, it was only 1 day short of being 1 year. If we're looking at our top at 69,000 to where we're at today, we're about 329 days. So we're just a little bit off, which is also going to be lining up with November being somewhat of a major point for our cycle low. Whether we get a final capitulation or not, November is showing us that that will be 1 year from our cycle top. That will also be exactly 4 years from our cycle bottom. So November is lining up to be a very important point. It's exactly 1 year of a bear market, and it's exactly 4 years from our last bear market bottom. These are huge, huge, huge points that we need to pay attention for. Now with Dogecoin, we see that we're about 400 days from our high to our low. So let's assume Dogecoin doesn't make a lower low. Let's assume that we hold support. What I like about altcoins is the fact that even though many of them topped here at 65,000, many of the altcoins corrected for almost exactly 1 year from their peak high to their peak low. Dogecoin was a little bit over by about 50 days, but we're looking here at about a 1 year correction from peak high to peak low. And so, if Bitcoin is to bottom here, and we just kind of trend sideways or do something similar, that would show that the altcoins are also lining up with a 4-year cycle. And so I wouldn't be surprised that if the altcoins start breaking out along with Bitcoin, let's assume Bitcoin bottoms here, and we start breaking out, it would line up with what a lot of altcoins are showing us. Chainlink is a prime example of this. If we look from our peak high from May to our peak low that we made over here, Chainlink it corrected for almost exactly 1 year. It was only 1 day off from being 1 calendar year. And so this is exactly what we want to see. Another beautiful thing about Chainlink, in my opinion, is how it actually follows a 4-year cycle for the first time. This was our peak low of our last bear market. This came June of 2018. If we analyze from here all the way over to this bear market low that we saw, that's almost exactly 4 years. This is 1,421 days. So what we're seeing is altcoins that are also starting to follow a 4-year cycle. Dogecoin might not be following the big picture 4-year cycle because we'd have to analyze from over here. It would be interesting to see if it is, but if we're looking right here and we're going all the way to here, this is only about 821 days. So this isn't following a 4-year cycle if we're measuring from peak low to peak low. We would have to go all the way over to pretty much these lows over here, which as we can see wasn't even close to being the peak low. So with Dogecoin, it's not really following anything that's of significance we could talk about. But Chainlink is. Chainlink is following a 4-year cycle. And so what this is telling me is that many of the altcoins that topped in May of 2021, they have actually completed their 4-year cycles, right? They ended up doing it a little bit earlier than Bitcoin did. So what that tells me is that there is a potential where Bitcoin could bottom where we're at. Let's assume we don't make a lower low. Then if that's the case, altcoins are going to hold support, and altcoins are also going to already have been stitching in their low, and they would have given us an early signal that, hey, the bottom is in, and this is sideways accumulation. As far as what we're looking for in a 4-year cycle, Chainlink has finished it. This is where we would look to start buying Chainlink if we're following 4-year cycles. And so I think it's really important that all of these are kind of lining up with each other. Binance Coin is kind of the same thing. If we're analyzing from peak high to peak low, that one was almost exactly 1 year. It's extending a little bit over. So anyways, guys, this is the video I had for you. Just wanted to summarize some thoughts and questions that you guys had. Wanted to talk to you guys about how cyclical all of these cycles are and how you guys can go about making profit by following this exact analysis. Whether we get another low or whether the low is in, ultimately, I know that the cycle low is going to be in because of the fact our 4-year cycle timeframes are up. We know that these are significant points of pivots, and historically it's proven to be very accurate. I'm once again going to be betting big on all of this stuff to be playing out. If we get a lower low, I'm going to be buying the dip heavily. If we go sideways, I'm going to continue the dollar cost average like I've already been. Overall, We know that a big cycle is going to be coming, and so I don't care about the short-term price action a whole lot. All of our big picture analysis is flashing buy signals, so I think that that should be our primary focus. If you guys found value in this, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these amazing videos. If you guys want to join the Discord server, download my free ebook, or you guys want to actually sign up for my VIP, follow all of my trades that I do, follow all of the signals that I'm going to be going into, how I'm restructuring my portfolio, which cryptos I'm going to be buying and selling, and all of that fun stuff. Links are in the description to go ahead and sign up on my website. It's a lifetime access. You guys are going to be able to get access for as long as I'm doing all of this stuff on my channel. So check it out. Links are in the description. And with that being said, I will catch you in the next one. As always, peace out.